So, if you're here, I assume you already have a basic idea of what Monsters and Memories, or M&M, is. So I'm not going to get into that too much. Now, the game has a quick start guide, which I highly recommend since it covers controls, UI, buying and selling, interacting with NPCs, changing chat font size, and so on. I've included a link in the description of this video, and it can also be accessed in-game from the options menu. Give it a look over and refer to it as needed while playing. Having said that, there are some general concepts in the game that are glossed over in the guide because they're intuitive to veterans of Classic EQ or its Project 1999 emulator servers. However, some of these practices may be unintuitive for people without that background. So this is a quick primer based on how I play M&M as someone who loves classic EverQuest. To that end, I'd like to first set some expectations that I hope will help you get on what I think is the best wavelength for enjoying the game. In many ways, M&M is unhelpful by design, or so I believe. A core part of the game, as I understand it, is avoiding giving the player instructions. This is how classic EverQuest was. For example, we didn't really know what stats did. The game didn't explain the difference between agility and dexterity, or things like that. The devs reportedly wanted players to experiment and share what they had learned with each other. In general, EverQuest gave players very little direction, and it was up to the community to help each other learn the game. In contrast, games like World of Warcraft became very successful, in part because they gave players rails to follow from the get-go, and optimized the experience around following those tracks, and minimizing confusion. These games tell you how to play them and what to do. Every time you complete one of the game's conveniently provided objectives, it rewards you. In Monsters and Memories, however, the game tells you neither how to play nor what to do. Figuring out what you want to do and how to do it are, in a sense, core gameplay. This means rewards come more organically, since they are the result of things you chose to do, rather than things you were directed to do. This also means you have to be comfortable with confusion, since you'll often not be sure what the best thing to do is. I'm working on a longer video exploring this concept in greater depth, so for now, let's just look at this comment that Dargeth made on the M&M Discord. I think the key difference is that trance, or perhaps put another way, fun moment-to-moment gameplay. Games like WoW, in my opinion, are not fun to play moment-to-moment, so the fun is in the breadcrumb dopamine hits from minor incremental rewards. That's the drip feed that keeps you addicted. In EverQuest, and Monsters and Memories so far, the drip feed is actually the act of playing, setting small, incremental goals for myself and then achieving them. Even goals as simple as find a fire beetle eye so I'm not blind. Plus, there's actual engaging, and so far enjoyable, social elements that help bind together the times between those beats. Modern MMOs don't really have that glue binding in the cracks. They rely on the breadcrumb dopamine hits. All of this is to say that M&M is a live-in-the-moment kind of game, while games at the World of Warcraft school are about looking forward to the next provided objective or piece of loot. So, if you come at M&M with the mindset that you just want to get your next level or your next piece of epic loot, you may become frustrated at all the little things getting in the way of doing that. But, if you view every moment of the game as gameplay, it becomes more enjoyable. Or, for me, extremely enjoyable. Or as Yoda would say,
all his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was, what he was doing.
And keeping your mind on what you're doing can be life and death in Monsters and Memories, because there are high-level foes wandering around lower-level areas that will wreck you if you aren't minding your surroundings. Anyway, from the perspective of the moment-to-moment experience, all those things that eat up your time when you start, learning the controls, learning where your class guild is, learning what is and is not worth looting, learning where to sell things, learning your way around, learning how to overcome night blindness, learning which things will attack you on sight, learning the safest way to your destination, and so on, all become as rewarding as learning how to make yourself useful in a group, or learning what techniques to use against a boss. Since every part of the game is tied to the core gameplay loop of learn the game, try to appreciate each time you successfully do anything, as though it were itself a quest reward. I usually have a lot of potential tasks I could be doing in M&M, and choosing which to prioritize gives me a sense of agency and gives more meaning to everything I do in the game. When I repeat an activity like selling to the right merchant, I feel a sense of accomplishment, because knowing this merchant's location and buying habits, those were things I learned. I find the activities that would be mundane in another game become engaging if they are the result of either experimentation, and therefore an expression of my hard work, or successfully getting help from the community, and therefore remind me of the social bonds I make in this virtual world. If you can get into that mindset, perhaps the initial frustrations of the game will feel not like a chore, but as a challenge to engage with. An ever-present example of this is navigation. That is, finding your way around the world. As with classic EverQuest, there are no in-game maps and monsters and memories at time of recording. You have to learn your way around and orient yourself using landmarks. For me, this is really fun and immersive. It really makes me learn the world. My eyes aren't on the UI, but on the physical objects placed in the virtual environment. I'm looking around. I'm noticing things. My first in-game night in the Night Harbor newbie yard, that is, the area where new players fight things to level up, it was so dark that I decided to just take a break and explore the well-lit city. I spent the 30 or so minutes of night wandering around and got a pretty good mental map of the area around the west gate. Then at daybreak, I headed back out to the newbie yard to fight more stuff. This felt really rewarding, because next time I headed into the city, I knew where things were. If you find this kind of unguided exploration frustrating, however, you can check on the wiki for player-made maps that you can refer to. Just click on the zone you want and see if there are any maps on the wiki page. This will lower the challenge level, while still forcing you to pay attention to your surroundings to compare them with the out-of-game map. So, when you start the game, after you make your character of course, you get plopped down outside a city. You'll see some critters wandering around. This is the newbie yard. It's where new players fight stuff to gain experience. What should you do now? Well, first get to a safe place and memorize your starting abilities. Search for Memorize in the new player guide. You might notice you also have a guild note in your inventory. If you find your class guild in the city and hand the note to the leader, you can begin your class quest. This is completely optional, however. If you just want to dive into adventuring without wandering around the city for a while, go ahead. You will eventually have to find your guild to buy new abilities as you level up, but that's hours down the road. Quests and monsters and memories can be very interesting. They can tell you more about the world, they can get you some nice loot, and they can improve your faction standing with different groups, which affects which NPCs will attack you and which will be available for quests and buying and selling. But the quests are all optional. They're always your choice and something you have to seek out. And what they do not do is give you substantial experience. Your character gains experience from grinding, that is, fighting stuff over and over again. So if you want to level up, the main thing is to just head into the newbie yard and start killing things. That's the main way to advance your character. Before you start attacking things in the newbie yard, however, an important thing to do is understand conning. Conning, which is short for considering, is a way to size up an NPC or PC. To do so, hit the C key. This will give you information about your target, such as its level compared to you, and its demeanor, that is, how it feels about you. This is important because some things will attack you on sight and others will not. You also want to make sure you aren't attacking anything too difficult or anything that is too far beneath you to give you experience, although you won't have to worry about that for a few levels. I generally recommend conning everything before you approach. Even in the city, there may be some things that will attack you on sight, so con first. You'll notice you only have 8 inventory slots, plus slots where you can later add bags to increase your inventory space. And 2 of the slots are presumably taken up by food and drink. As a note, make sure you always have food and drink because you auto-consume it over time, and if you run out, you'll start getting weaker and will eventually not be able to play effectively. The limited inventory means you'll have to be strategic in what you loot. Become comfortable leaving things behind if they aren't worth filling an inventory slot. I suggest targeting the same couple of mob types. Mobs basically means enemies. I've heard it comes from MUDs, where it stood for mobile object, but I don't know if that's true. Write in the comments if you know what mob means. Anyway, I often just hunt snakes and rats, and loot the items with a subscript. The subscript means that many of this item can be stacked into a single inventory slot. By prioritizing like this, you can fill your inventory with stacks of a few different animal parts, which you can then easily sell to a cook or butcher in the city. That's my general approach anyway. Maybe you can figure out a better one. This sort of strategic play is another of the moment-to-moment decisions the game is full of. Eventually, you'll have enough money to buy a bag from a merchant. This will increase your inventory space and make looting easier. You can also get free bags from certain quests or starting traits. Ask in chat if you want more hints about this. Don't be afraid to ask multiple times if you don't get an answer. Eventually someone should be able to give you some help. Asking for help is a core part of the game too. If you aren't going to turn in the guild note you started with, I suggest putting it in the bank. If you are starting in Night Harbor, there's a bank by each of the gates you can start at. Although if you start in the Necropolis area, I'm not sure if there's a bank there. I usually put anything I'm not likely to use in the near future in the bank, so as to free up inventory space. As you gain more and more money, you also may want to change smaller coins to larger denominations to reduce weight, since each coin weighs a small amount, and this will eventually add up. Finally, since you forget your spells when you die and have to rememorize them, and since your spellbook remains on your corpse when you die, some people put their spellbook in the bank after memorizing their abilities. That way, if they die, they can go to the bank, memorize their abilities again, and have their spells to help them get back their corpse. While there are some fights you can win alone, you may find the game easier and more enjoyable if you group up with other players. To form a group, ask in /OOC if anyone wants to group up. This often takes the form of something like /OOC, level 2 Paladin LFG, or if you see someone around your level looking for a group in OOC, send them a tell saying you want to join. To invite someone to a group, use /invite and their name, or target them and use the invite button in your UI. Groups tend to find a set location, also known as a camp, where they will grind mobs for experience, although some groups will move around looking for fights, what is known as crawling. Many camp locations develop known names. For example, in the EverQuest dungeon Castle Mistmore, common camps were Pond, GY, meaning graveyard, and CE, meaning castle entrance. And if someone calls a camp check in OOC, it means they want to know which camps already have groups at them. Character classes generally fall into several group roles, although some classes can handle more than one role. Unlike most MMOs, with the so-called trinity of tank, DPS, and heals, M&M also has Puller, someone who goes out to find mobs to bring back to the camp. If you're playing a monk, you'll probably be asked to do this. CC, or Crowd Control, someone who incapacitates adds, that is, extra mobs, so that the group only has to focus on one at a time. This is the main role of an enchanter, although there are other classes with CC abilities. And sometimes there's a buffer, someone who dumps a whole suite of buffs on groupmates. Shamans commonly do this in EverQuest, but I'm not sure to what extent it will be the case in M&M. When in a group, there is certain etiquette that is generally followed. One of these is looting. Loot is free for all, so anyone in the group is mechanically capable of looting anything the group has killed. So of course, you shouldn't take all the loot for yourself. Groups generally don't adopt strict rules for looting, but after you loot a couple of corpses, I recommend sitting back and giving other groupmates a chance to do some looting of their own. When a nice object drops, it is customary to inform the rest of the group so that anyone who needs it can say so. If multiple people need it, or want it, it's customary to roll for the item using /random 1-100. Search for random in the new player guide. Communication is generally important in a group. Common terms to know are pulling, when the puller goes out to get mobs. Add, said when an additional enemy unexpectedly attacks the group mid-fight. Pop, when the area repops, that is, when mobs respawn. Incoming, or ink, what some people say when they're about to pull a mob. Mezzing, what enchanters sometimes say when mesmerizing a mob so that it will just stand there stupefied. When this happens, do not attack it. Not until the unmezzed mobs are dead anyway. FM, LOM, OOM. These are full mana, low on mana, and out of mana, respectively. If the healer is LOM, it's probably a good time to take a med break to meditate and regain some mana. Run, or zone. When it looks like the group is going to wipe, it might be time to make a run for the zone line to escape. To help coordinate damage and to avoid waking up CC'd mobs, it's advisable to use the /assist command. This will cause you to target and attack the target of your target. That is, if you target the puller or tank and type /assist, or make a macro of it, you will attack their target. If anyone in the group dies, it's standard etiquette to help them recover their corpse. You can give people consent to drag your corpse with /consent, which will allow them to use the /corpse command on your corpse to drag it to a new location, hopefully the entrance of the dungeon. Often rogues are tasked with dragging groupmates' corpses since they have stealth. While in a dungeon, there is also the etiquette of calling out a train. A train is when you run to the zone line with mobs chasing you. These mobs can aggro on other PCs en route to the zone line, or when they're pathing back from the zone line. To avoid getting other PCs killed, it's standard etiquette to /shout train, or train to zone, so that other players know to get out of the way. I always make a macro of this so I can press it repeatedly while running for my life. Lastly, you should also respect other groups' camps. That is, don't pull mobs from another group's area. This is considered chaosing or kill stealing and will not make you many friends. So, those are some key practices common among EverQuest vets. Hopefully those will help you get into Monsters and Memories more easily. Again, the community is a big part of the game, so don't be shy about asking for help either on the Discord server or the in-game chat. If you don't get a response, ask again. Sooner or later, someone will help you. You'll get a handful of people who will unhelpfully say, "Figure it out," or "This has already been asked 50 times. But there are plenty of others who will be happy to help. I know I spend considerable time in-game answering questions in chat. Also, remember that the wiki is your friend, and while it is currently still in an early state, it will presumably become increasingly helpful as people add to it. So there you go. Hope to see you in-game.